Today we're going to look at simplifying expressions involving radicals. We're going to take a look at two different examples here, this one and this one. Now I'm going to consider each of these examples as several smaller problems. I'm just going to take a look at the constants together here. I'm just going to take a look here at the x variables, and then I'm going to take a look here at the y variables. So I'm going to consider this as three separate problems. So I'm going to start here with my fraction bar. I'm going to have it all ready to go because I know that some things might end up on the top of the fraction and some things might end up on the bottom of the fraction. So the first thing I notice is that I have 3 over 6. And that's just exactly like the fractions that we've been dealing with before. So you simply remember that if I reduce 3 over 6, that fraction reduces to 1 over 2. So I have a 1 in the numerator and a 2 in the denominator. Now I'm going to take a look at the x to the 4th over x. Now I'm comparing these because they have the same variable, they're just raised to different powers. Okay? So I remember when I look at this that if I'm dividing, if I have a base raised to a power divided by that same base raised to the power, then I'm going to go ahead and subtract the exponents. Now I do want to notice it might look like that x doesn't have an exponent, but I can remember that secretly there is a 1 written there. I just don't write it down. So when I look at this, I'm going to take 4 minus 1, and that's going to give me 3. So my new exponent is going to be 3. This x cubed is going to be in the denominator because the x to the 4th is larger and it's on the top. So I'm going to have x cubed in the numerator. Now I'm going to take a look at the y's. And I notice something here with the y's, I have a negative exponent. Now there's several different ways that you can deal with this. I'm going to choose to move this down into the denominator. Whenever you have a negative exponent, you're going to get rid of that negative exponent. You're going to either move it into the bottom if it's already in the top, or move it into the top if it's already in the bottom. So this one's already in the top, so I'm simply going to move it down to the bottom. So then I would have y cubed from right here, and then I would have y squared. Now I notice that I have two factors involving y, and I want to simplify that. So the next thing that I'm going to say is here, I'm going to still continue to have my fraction bar. Now I'm going to drop this 1 because 1 times x cubed is just x cubed. So I'm going to have x cubed on the top. I still have this 2 on the bottom. And now I notice I'm multiplying y cubed times y squared. So what I do when I multiply is I add the exponents. So I'm going to go ahead and add 3 and 2 and get y to the 5th. Now I notice I only have x raised to 1 power, y raised to 1 power, and I've simplified my constants as much as possible. I also don't have any negative exponents. So that means that I have simplified this as much as possible. Alright, now let's take a look at the other one. Now we notice here with this one we have this exponent out here on the side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify the inside first and then deal with this exponent on the outside. So I'm simply going to look at this inside all by itself first and kind of ignore this negative 6 out there. Now this isn't the only way you can start this problem, but this is the way that I'm going to choose to do it. So I'm going to look inside and I'm going to notice that I have x to the negative 4th and x to the negative 2nd. And I can definitely simplify that. Now there's several ways that you can go about doing this. I'll show you one. So we're going to start here with our fraction bar. We're going to keep the x cubed. Now I'm going to notice that this y to the negative 4th can go down into the denominator to get rid of this negative sign, and the y to the negative 2 can go up into the numerator. This isn't the only way to do this, but this is one way to do it. So I'm going to have y squared, and then I still have the z, and then y to the 4th in the denominator, and then all of this is still raised to the negative 6th power. Now I notice I can simplify some more still inside here. So I'm still going to have my x cubed on the top, but now I notice I have y squared on the top and y to the 4th on the bottom. Well, 4 minus 2 is 2, so I'm going to have y squared in the denominator. Now notice it's going to stay in the denominator because the y to the 4th is larger, that exponent is larger. So it will stay in the denominator. And then I'll have z here. and then I have to the negative sixth. Now, the next step that I can do is I'm going to now use this negative 6. And so what it's going to happen is I notice I have all factors and quotients here. So this is going to give me x cubed to the negative 6th, z to the negative 6th, and y squared to the negative 6. So I'm simply applying that negative 6 to each one of my factors. Now do notice these are factors, not terms. This does not work if you have terms. So the next thing that I'm going to do is now I've got two exponents put together here and here. So I'm going to go ahead and simplify that. So I remember that if I have this, I'm going to take the 3 times the negative 6, which would give me x to the negative 18th. This would give me z to the negative 6th, and this would give me y to the negative 12th. Now, when we want to simplify, we do need to make sure that we don't have any negative exponents, so I do need to get rid of those negative exponents. So here what's going to happen is, I'm going to write my fraction bar ahead of time. Anything that's in the top that has a negative will go into the bottom. Anything that in the bottom that has a negative will go into the top. So I will end up with y to the 12th, x to the 18th, and z to the 6th. And so now I have simplified this as much as possible. Notice I only have one y raised to 1 power, one x raised to 1 power, and one z raised to 1 power. I don't have any exponents outside of my parentheses. I've gotten rid of that, and also I don't have any negative exponents. So I have simplified this as much as possible. So a couple of things to remember when you look at this. Make sure that you're using these rules in the appropriate way. If you have terms, you're not going to be able to use these rules. You need to have things that are multiplied or divided. The other thing is make sure that when you're done simplifying, you should have no negative exponents. So be careful about that and really watch out for those signs when you do that. And so now we have gone ahead and simplified each of these expressions.